One of our local dailies in Kenya today has a very interesting front page story. The gist of it is about how lonely Deputy President William Samoei Ruto must be, having been completely isolated from the government where he's supposed to be the deputy in charge. In fact, it says in a caption on the front page, the deputy president is a very lonely man. And of course, this depicts a defeated deputy president. However, is that the political reality? And please, let's keep the emotions out of this one. This is a very sober, clinical analysis. Well, the latest developments within the Jubilee party actually suggests a different scenario. Yes, it is absolutely true that DP Ruto is a man under siege. That is obvious. However, it is also true to say that he's still putting up quite a fight. And the latest is that he has won a very major victory. Perhaps his most important and his most major victory in a very long time. Many of you, of course, will know exactly what I'm talking about. The Registrar of Political Parties has rejected the changes made by Raphael Tuju, the Secretary General of the party, who told us that they had actually been ordered by the party leader. And on our show today, we're going to analyze why this development is extremely significant. And more important, what this struggle for control of the party is really all about. Because that is precisely what this is. My friend, whatever side of the political divide you belong to, this is one analysis you cannot afford to miss. Because it speaks of our immediate political future after the virus. But first, I'd like us to rush to China, where there's a very major development that affects Kenyans. And then I'll give you some very fascinating information about a British lady called Katharine Gun, who is very closely linked, in a very interesting way, to what is unfolding globally. So, let's start with China. There are strong indications, very strong indications, that the Kenyan government is now starting to make an effort to evacuate Kenyan nationals stranded in the country called China. What? Because we know, until now, the Kenyan government has had absolutely no interest in evacuating any Kenyan from anywhere in the world and bringing them back home. So why now? What has changed? For starters, we all know that there's pressure from the Kenyan public. And that's not surprising, because many are touched, many are affected by relatives, friends, acquaintances who are stuck in China. Now, I want us to be very clear, because these days we have some people on this channel, and indeed in our forums, who seem to be very eager to put words into my mouth. So let me make myself very clear. The government has not sent any aircraft to collect Kenyans from China. No, that hasn't happened yet. What has happened is the first step in that the government is trying to ascertain how many Kenyans would like to return home at their expense? Now, obviously, if you wanted to bring Kenyans back home, this would be the first step. Yeah, you don't send an aircraft to China and then you also send them with a Kenyan tout. I'm a tattoo tout, who stands somewhere in the airport and shouts, Nairobi, Nairobi, Nairobi. Wakenya wangapi wangependa kuja Nairobi? Nairobi, Nairobi, Nairobi. And then he bangs the side of the aircraft. Kenyans will understand precisely what I'm talking about. No, that's not the way it's done. First of all, you compile figures. You find out where precisely those Kenyans are. But in this case, the government has even gone further than that, because it has indicated the place where Kenyans will be airlifted from within China. Which means, if this is followed through, Kenyans will have to make way from wherever they are in China, and China is a huge country, to that particular location in order to be lifted back home. That in itself is a very strong indication that the government actually plans, is determined to bring some Kenyans, as many Kenyans as possible, back home, which is excellent news. Now, knowing the way Kenya works, and indeed to quote the words of my colleague Hezron, because Hezron says, Chris, kuna mkubwa fulani watu wake wako stranded huko. Hawa watu hawezi kuchange namna hii. Kuna mkubwa fulani na amekuwa akiweka pressure. Kama ingekuwa tu watu wadogo wadogo, watu wa kawaida, wangeozea huko, mimi nakwambia. Well, as crude as I found those remarks, I also found it very difficult to argue against them. Because it is true. History shows us that in Kenya, we don't move, we don't act until some important person, not an ordinary Kenyan, is affected by something. Then we move very quickly. Very sad, but very true. However, in this particular instance, my attention has been drawn to something else. The timing of this change of heart. It comes at a time when there have been persistent reports of harassment and discrimination of Africans living in China, where locals in China are saying that Africans, black Africans, are actually the source of this virus. And what this has done is to create a growing and very major backlash from Africa against the Chinese. Never before in our history have we Africans united and ganged up behind one single cause. What the Chinese have actually done is to bring Africans together. And it is clear that this is developing into a political issue where citizens of various African countries will bring their respective governments to account over what is being done to protect their nationals in China from this harassment. Let me spell it out. There is a good chance that this issue of Africans being harassed in China could eventually bring down some African governments. Oh yes. When so many people start to speak in one voice, you had better be careful if you're a government. Well, whatever the reason, we are grateful that at least there's now a ray of hope that some Kenyans stranded in China will be able to get back home. Now, how is Katharine Gun linked to the current global crisis? Actually, we can learn a lot about the current crisis from the super fascinating story of Mrs. Gun. She was actually a British intelligence officer who worked for the Government Communications Headquarters, or GCHQ, here in the UK, which is the equivalent of America's NSA, National Security Agency. And her work was to translate documents and audios from Chinese into English. And on 31st January 2003, she came across an email that changed her life. What were the contents of this email? The email was from the National Security Agency, the NSA, the United States. And it was ordering British intelligence to place surveillance on 6 individuals who represented 6 different countries, but all sat at the United Nations Security Council. The purpose of this surveillance was to collect damaging information against the individuals, which was obviously going to be used for blackmail purposes. Using our language on this channel, they wanted to compile files which they would later wave at these 6 individuals so that they play ball. Now, what does surveillance mean? It means tapping their phones, following them around, and there are actually 3 African countries represented in this list of 6. I'll give you the full list in a minute. And you know the bad African habits. Actually, they're human bad habits. But we Africans tend to take it a notch higher. Let's just be honest with ourselves. You know, women manenos, and so on and so forth. The 6 countries were Angola, Cameroon, Guinea, Bulgaria, Chile, and Pakistan, who at that time all had seats in the Security Council. This was 2003. And what Americans were looking for was to legalize the invasion of the country called Iraq. And so if there was a UN resolution on that, they'd be covered. Now, every intelligence officer anywhere in the world is bound to never, ever talk about their work or any details or information they come across at work. Not even to your spouse. And in Britain, they have the Official Secrets Act, which will convict you and send you straight to prison if you ever let out any government secrets. But Katharine Gun's conscience couldn't allow her to let this thing slide, because she knew that the world was about to go to war, where people would get killed based on false intelligence. In other words, the world was about to be misled to go into a war. Now, this story is very instructive because it tells us that before, in the history of the globe, the entire world has been misled to support one course of action based on information that was not correct. Now already, we know with the current crisis, and this is information in the public domain, that in several instances, figures of those affected with the virus have been hiked up, falsified. And one of the ways this has been done is by taking people who have passed on from other ailments, and reporting that they actually passed on as a result of this virus. There are very many examples of that, and plenty of evidence of that. But more significantly, recently, President Donald Trump of the United States accused the state of New York of doing precisely this, hiking up the number of figures of those who had passed on. With the benefit of hindsight, it is now crystal clear that there was another reason the United States wanted to invade Iraq, but it had absolutely nothing to do with the fact that Saddam Hussein, the then leader of that country, possessed weapons of mass destruction. And so, if it is indeed true that the entire world was misled to go into a lockdown based on data that was incorrect, then it can only mean there was another reason for forcing the world to go on lockdown. There has to be a very good reason why the powerful, the ones who are making this decision, did not stop to do a very simple calculation. And that calculation would be the estimated number of people who would be casualties to the flu as compared to the estimated number of casualties from the consequences of a lockdown, like hunger, civil strife, etc., etc. The really important point here, if it is indeed being misled, it will not be the first time it has happened. Now, Katharine Gun's story has a very fascinating end. She was arrested, and then 8 months later, charged in a court of law under the Official Secrets Act. Now, when you break a law, you've broken the law. The judge is not supposed to judge how fair or how unfair the law is. All they're supposed to do is ensure that they're satisfied you broke that law, period. And so, it looked like this young lady, because she was only 29 at the time, would go straight into jail. But something very shocking happened on the day her trial started. The prosecution refused to present any evidence against Mrs. Gun, and the court had no option but to acquit her. Now, it is believed that the reason why they took that course of action, apart from the politics, elections were just around the corner, was that Mrs. Gun's lawyers had asked for certain secret documents. In a court requests documents, the court gets them. Oh yes. And these documents were supposed to help the defense prove that their client, even in breaking the Official Secrets Act law, was doing it to block an illegality. Let me quickly simplify that. You can kill a man, which is against the law. That's murder. However, if it was a situation whereby you killed the man to save your own life, then you'll be acquitted, because you did it in self-defense. Something like that. Now, if the case had proceeded, the British government would have been forced to release those secret documents for public scrutiny. And so, they chose to keep their secrets rather than prosecute Mrs. Gun. Now, Katharine Gun is celebrated as one of the most important whistleblowers of our time. But unfortunately, her actions were not enough to stop the United States from doing what they were very determined to do, for reasons best known to themselves and, of course, the United Kingdom. Because no weapons of mass destruction were ever found. And to date, over 4,000 US soldiers have lost their lives in Iraq. Let's not even talk about the civilian casualties. And as I speak, US soldiers are still in Iraq. My hope and prayer is that we'll have a whistleblower who will come out and give us concrete evidence that somebody somewhere misled the whole world. And of course the consequences are still unfolding. In fact, they're just starting. especially in a country like Kenya, where we must grapple with many challenges going forward, linked to economy, going down as a result of the actions that have been forced upon us to control the pandemic. Now on to the DP Ruto manenos. Why would people fight for control of a political party? Wouldn't it be easier for somebody to just walk away from that political party and form their own brand new outfit? After all, it is no secret in Kenya that political parties are nothing more but special purpose vehicles to get people into power. Once they have completed their terms, that party ends with them. And we have so many examples. There was PNU, Mwai Kibaki's Party of National Unity, which is now a shell of its former self. There was the National Rainbow Alliance. There was the Labour Democratic Party, LDP. And I can go on and on and on. So, what is really behind this tussle for control over Jubilee, the ruling party? Because the changes that were filed by the Secretary General, Raphael Tuju, were opposed by, wait for this one, 350 members of the Jubilee party. And they all did it in writing during this era of the curfew. Can you imagine how difficult it is to get 350 letters done in the current circumstances? But they were done and duly signed, which effectively blocked the move by Raphael Tuju and his faction of the Jubilee Party to push through these changes, which were really very minor at face value. It was an appointment of 5 individuals to replace 3 who had since been appointed to government. And these 5 were being appointed to the National Management Committee. Well, there's one thing that makes sense. Let us assume that what we have been saying on this channel is correct, and that the Jubilee Party wants to officially merge with ODM, Raila Odinga's ODM. If that were to happen successfully, then it means it would be much easier to throw out of Jubilee Party, or rather out of the new party, which would be a merger of ODM and Jubilee. It would be easier to throw out of the new outfit, DP Ruto and his allies. In other words, it would be an important first step in throwing out the deputy president from Jubilee, or rather the new party, of which Jubilee would be a part of. And the National Management Committee would play a key role in this merger and in what would follow. And therefore now it makes perfect sense where DP Ruto and allies would do everything in their power to ensure that they retain control of the Jubilee Party. What that means is that the party cannot vote, is not in a position to vote successfully for a merger. In other words, the deputy president has enough influence and numbers within the party to frustrate any such move. Now that makes the whole thing clearer. But this is not the end of it, because the President of the Republic of Kenya, who is also the party leader of Jubilee, is very powerful. And so you have the powerful president on one side, and then you have the influential deputy president on the other. So what is the result? A very fierce and vicious battle for control of the Jubilee Party. And so, whatever your feelings towards the deputy president, you cannot say that he has been defeated. Yes, he's under siege, but he's fighting the fight of his life. Is not yet done. And therefore that front page story in one of our local dailies is not accurate. There's no way it can be accurate. And I'm talking about the perception the article portrays. So that anybody who is new to this, anybody who doesn't think through it carefully, will believe it. Because what it's actually saying is that the Deputy President is finished. Is he? I believe we have clearly shown that he's not. Yeah, the march is still on. The political battle is still very much on. Now, there's a super fascinating sideshow in all this. Yeah, allies of the Deputy President have told us that they plan to take legal action against the Secretary General of the Jubilee Party, Raphael Tuju, and the party chairman, Nelson Zuya. And what they're accusing the two of is of falsifying signatures. In other words, they're accusing them of forgery. Now, before you start getting very excited, let me just remind you that such a case will absolutely go nowhere. Because before you file a case, you have to collect enough evidence to enable such a case to stand up in a court of law. You must reach that point where the judge looks at the evidence before him and says, yes, these individuals have a case to answer. Now, it's a very tall order for DP Ruto and his team to ever reach such a place. How do you collect evidence against state machinery? How? And in any case, Raphael Tuju and company are not rookies. These are not people who just came from nowhere the other day. No. And therefore, if there was even some element of truth, I'm not saying there is, but I'm saying supposing there was, I am very sure it would be impossible to get enough evidence to stand up in any court of law. And so, in my view, this is just a ploy, a strategy by the DP Ruto camp. And I believe the main aim is to keep this conversation going, because there's a lot of things to attract people's attention away from this story, and especially the current unfolding global crisis over the virus. But what they want is something hot enough, to keep the attention of the public on this story and on whatever they'll say next or whatever they'll actually do next. Now, if you've been a member of this channel for any length of time, you will know that I'm definitely not a supporter of the Deputy President. But then I must report the facts. I must report the reality of what is actually unfolding on the ground without fear or favor. And looking at it in that way, it would appear that the Deputy President has won a major battle. He is very far from winning the war, and indeed he remains an underdog in that war. But this battle, he has won. And now, a lot depends on what he does next. Indeed, also for the other side, Raphael Tuju's side and the side allied to the President, it is also extremely important what they do next. And of course, some Kenyans are very excited. They're very grateful for all this drama. Why? Because it's diverting their attention away from their plight, the dreary affair of this virus, and all its implications. And so, we wait with bated breath to see what happens next. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.